Nilo's father, Antonio Hughes, came up behind the defendant and then punched him repeatedly. That's what you're looking at right there. Two deputies wrestled Hughes to the ground. He was still struggling as backup arrived.
She broke my daughter's neck. That is how my daughter died. She died on the scene. She was in the hospital for 15 days because I couldn't let her go. When they caught it dead on arrival means she died at the scene.
Child killers are among the most hated and evil criminals on the planet. And that is the reason most of them don't last a few days in jail before they get brutally smoked by fellow inmates for hurting innocent children. For some of them, though, their punishments start right inside the courtroom as they come face to face with enraged family members of their victims. So, in today's video, we're diving into 5 disturbing courtroom moments where baby murderers faced brutal attacks. Warning, the footage you're about to see is deeply disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. For the first case, we're diving into the chilling case of Deshaun Brown. In June 2022, tension brewed inside the Hamilton Common Pleas courtroom as Deshaun Brown sat there waiting for the verdict that would hold him accountable for a crime so dark it sent shockwaves through Cincinnati. You see, this wasn't just another case. This was about a brutal, cold-blooded act against an innocent woman and her 3-year-old child. Back in December 2020, Nitisha Lattimore was found brutally murdered in her Walnut Hills apartment. Her lifeless body lay there for days, until Deshaun, her supposed partner, made a sickening attempt to dispose of her body in the Ohio River.
We'll take a look at this video here as a court hearing turns violent today. The man accused of stabbing a mother to death and throwing her toddler in the Ohio River was attacked by that toddler's father. Deshaun Brown was in court for a motions hearing today. A judge allowed the use of Brown's taped confessions to the killings of Nilo and Nitisha Lattimore as evidence. But as those proceedings were wrapping up, Nilo's father, Antonio Hughes, came up behind the defendant and then punched him repeatedly. That's what you're looking at right there. Two deputies wrestled Hughes to the ground. He was still struggling as backup arrived to take him out of the courtroom.
But Deshaun's actions didn't just stop there. No, he took things to a whole new level of cruelty that shook everyone. In a sickening act to erase any trace of Nitisha and the crime he had committed, Deshaun took her young son, 3-year-old Nilo, and threw him into the same river while he was still alive. Unfortunately, Nilo's little body was never found, leaving his family completely devastated and heartbroken. When the news of this horrific incident broke out, people started talking, and rumors spread that Nitisha had been pregnant with Deshaun's child, but lost the baby in a miscarriage. Deshaun, however, didn't believe it happened naturally. He convinced himself that Nitisha had somehow caused it, fueling a twisted need for revenge. This unfortunately led to the brutal double murder that broke many hearts, especially within Nitisha's family. By the time Deshaun went to trial, the family's pain had turned into anger, boiling over a storm of grief and rage.
Base, can we get back up in 560 now? Scott? Don't move!
What do you need?
Have him scoot in, and if you could just stand there, please. I can hear this.
No, go color me.
Nitisha's family watched from the benches, but one person couldn't contain his rage. Nilo's father, Antonio Hughes. Seething, overwhelmed by heartbreak, he leapt from his seat, lunging toward Deshaun in a moment of pure rage. In the end, the courtroom was left shaken and truly disturbed.
What's wrong? Chill out, dude. Take it. Take it.
As for now, Deshaun's trial is scheduled for January 2025, where the final verdict on his fate will be delivered.
No. Come with me. All right, you go.
I got it. Come on.
Next up is the spine-chilling story of Jasmine Gordon and Clifford Thomas, a couple who worked together to end the life of an innocent 3-year-old girl.
Sitting just off camera in the gallery is the dead child's father, Dwayne Smith. There's only a few feet and not much else between Smith and the man convicted of killing his daughter. When he's asked to deliver an impact statement, he delivers.
On August 31st, 2015, the case of Jasmine Gordon and Cloford Thomas came to a chilling end in the Wayne County Circuit Court, as the couple was convicted of the horrific death of little Jamila Smith. Jasmine and Clifford were supposed to be Jamila's caretakers. She was only 3, depending on them for her safety. But on September 18th, 2014, Jamila was rushed to the hospital with her tiny body battered and broken.
Thomas, who is not Jamila's father, was babysitting the girl when he claims she hit her head and stopped breathing. But authorities ruled her death a homicide, indicating the child died of multiple blunt force trauma injuries.
Her injuries were gory and horrifying: abrasions, internal bleeding, a torn pancreas. There was no mistaking the signs. Jamila had been brutally abused. Throughout the trial, testimonies from medical professionals painted a picture no parent should ever see. This little girl had over 50 injuries and wounds in various stages of healing. The medical examiner made it clear Jamila hadn't done this to herself, and all fingers pointed at Jasmine and Cloford. Jasmine, though, showed no remorse. Cold and silent, she barely flinched. Then, Dwayne Smith, Jamila's grieving father, reached his breaking point. He stood, approached Clifford Thomas, and landed a hard punch square in his jaw, and within seconds, the courtroom erupted in chaos as deputies pulled them apart.
During the sentencing for a 3-year-old girl's death, a brawl broke out in a Detroit courtroom when the girl's father attacked Clifford Thomas, the man responsible for killing his daughter, Jamila. The little girl's biological father, Dwayne Smith, got up to make a victim impact statement in court and then began yelling and punching Thomas, who was awaiting his sentence.
In the end, Jasmine Gordon was sentenced to 7 to 15 years for involuntary manslaughter, plus another 14 to 25 years for first-degree child abuse. Clifford Thomas was sentenced to 4.5 to 15 years for manslaughter, and an additional 1 to 2 years for resisting arrest. But for Dwayne Smith, there would be no justice for the cold-blooded murder of his daughter.
The courtroom was cleared and rescheduled. Jamila died in September 2014 after her mother, Jasmine Gordon, and her boyfriend, Clifford Thomas, rushed Jamila to the hospital. Authorities say the girl had bruises on her head and chest consistent with abuse. Later in the day, the mom was sentenced to 14 to 25 years for a child abuse conviction and 7 to 15 years on the manslaughter conviction. Her boyfriend was sentenced to 4.5 to 15 years for manslaughter and 1 to 2 years for resisting arrest.
Up next is another case that will send cold shivers down your spine. This is the story of Lacynthia Tidmore, the woman responsible for the death of an innocent 9-year-old girl.
She broke my daughter's neck. That is how my daughter died. She died on the scene. She was in the hospital for 15 days because I couldn't let her go. When they caught this dead on arrival means she died at the scene. She broke both of my daughter's femurs.
On a cold November morning in 2017, an innocent walk to the bus stop turned into a scene of horror. 9-year-old Desiree May was crossing Babbitt Road in Euclid, Ohio, on her way to school when 25-year-old Lacynthia Tidmore came speeding down the street. In one brutal moment, Lacynthia's car struck Desiree with devastating force, but instead of stopping, Lacynthia kept driving, abandoning Desiree to slowly die alone in the street.
Woman will spend the next 8 years behind bars for a hit and run that killed a 9-year-old girl last November. Lacynthia Tidmore was sentenced today after being convicted of the charges including aggravated vehicular homicide, vehicular manslaughter, not stopping for an accident, and others. On November 9th, the car driven by Tidmore struck the 9-year-old on Babbitt Road in Euclid, but didn't stop.
Lacynthia's vehicle, bearing the fresh scars of her crime, was later found abandoned at a nearby gas station. When she finally turned herself in, she claimed that she hadn't realized she'd struck a child. But in the courtroom, Lacynthia couldn't mask the truth. Desiree's mother confronted her. She detailed the brutal injuries inflicted on her child, both femurs broken, her small face shattered beyond recognition. Yet, in the face of this devastation, Lacynthia laughed as if it was nothing but a joke. The court initially handed down the maximum sentence, though an appeal later reduced it to 8 years in prison. Even this punishment felt hollow to Desiree's family. Anyway, in addition to her prison term, Lacynthia was stripped of her license for life and sentenced to 3 years of supervision upon release. But even that could never measure up to the precious life she destroyed. Desiree was gone, her future stolen, leaving behind nothing but pain for a family forced to bear the weight of her ruthless death, knowing the person responsible would get out of jail and have her life back in no time.
I do not feel that Lacynthia is remorseful, not one bit. That day that she hit Desire, not one time did she stop. She had people behind her blowing, telling her, "You are about to hit a child." Not one time did she slow down, put her phone down, nothing.
Next in line is a case that pushes the boundaries of horror. The story of an 18-year-old man who murdered a helpless 9-month-old baby.
Cameras were rolling when the man accused of shooting and killing a baby in Merced was attacked in court this afternoon. Take a look.
It was 12:23 at Merced County Superior Court, and 18-year-old Davin Mottschwein was standing there, ready to plead not guilty to one of the coldest charges imaginable, the murder of a 9-month-old baby, Darius King Grigsby. The baby had been caught in the crossfire of a drive-by gunfire, leaving Darius riddled with bullets and bleeding to death.
Police releasing late-breaking details here at 11 o'clock on the suspect who they say is responsible for shooting and killing a 9-month-old baby. Investigators say this man, 18-year-old Davin Mottschwein, is arrested and charged with first-degree murder.
Davin, young as he was responsible for the evil crime. Though he initially denied any involvement, he eventually cracked and admitted he was there, but he wouldn't name anyone else who might have been involved. In his confession, he admitted someone else was meant to be the target, a man who'd been walking with Darius's mother that day. But none of that mattered to the courtroom packed with people who wanted justice.
Catherine and Brian, they say getting the surveillance footage of the shooting, including video of the car the suspect was riding in, they were able to track down the rest, including taking a suspected killer off the streets. Just over a week after 9-month-old baby boy Darius King Grigsby was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting near Q and West 12th Street, Merced Police Lieutenant Joey Perez says they've taken the suspected shooter into custody.
Just as Davin stood to give his plea, something snapped in the room. Out of the corner of the eye, you could see James McCrae, another inmate with his own charges, break free from the restraints of courtroom order. James launched at Davin with his fists flying and rage burning in his eyes. He launched an attack at Davin, leaving the court in shock.
18-year-old Davin Mottschwein was sitting in the courtroom when another inmate attacked him from behind. No one was reported injured. Mottschwein is charged with the shooting death of 9-month-old Darius Grigsby.
To this day, Davin is still locked up in the county jail, awaiting his fate.
He just walked up behind him and started punching him. Shocked, but at the same time, he deserves it.
Stay in the courtroom, but I hold my grudge, and I did what I have to do and be strong for myself. I feel a lot of justice, a lot, because my son's getting what he wants, justice, and to rest in peace. So I'm glad he's getting that for him.
Our final case delves into the chilling story of Michael Madison, a serial killer whose brutal acts claimed the lives of 3 young girls. In July 2013, police in East Cleveland responded to complaints of a sickening odor coming from a garage rented by Michael Madison. Inside, they found a decomposing body wrapped in plastic. Within a day, 2 more bodies were discovered nearby, one in a backyard and another in a vacant house. All were within 200 yards of each other.
In the town of East Cleveland, Ohio, police charged a registered sex offender with murder after the bodies of 3 women were discovered. Michelle Miller is there.
It was a call about a bad smell that led police to this abandoned home and garage. 2 of the bodies were found here. The third victim was found in an overgrown field about 100 yards away.
Michael's murders were gruesome and chilling, each victim lured into a deadly trap. The autopsies revealed signs of physical trauma, with bruising and marks on the necks of all three victims. Investigators believed Michael would often use plastic bags to suffocate them, adding an extra layer of horror to his crimes.
All were wrapped in plastic bags and killed within the past 2 weeks. East Cleveland Mayor Gary Norton.
As a community, we are dealing with tragedy, we are healing, and we are strong.
The suspect is Michael Madison. One of the bodies was found near his car. Shortly after his arrest, groups of neighbors pitched in to help look for more bodies.
The victims were Shatisha Shee, 28, Angela Deskins, 38, and Sheila Terry, 18. Each woman had been reported missing in the months leading up to the grim discovery. Michael, a registered predator with a violent past, had a rap sheet filled with drug convictions and a prior charge for attempted rape in 2002. Now, he was the prime suspect in the brutal murders of 3 women.
Investigators say Madison told them he was inspired by a serial killer from Cleveland's past, Anthony Sowell. Sowell was convicted in 2011 for murdering 11 women and burying them in and around his home. He's now on death row.
If you want to commit a crime, East Cleveland is the perfect place to commit a crime.
When Michael went to trial in 2016, he showed no remorse. Van Terry, Sheila Terry's father, was in court that day. As he stared at the man who had murdered his daughter, he couldn't contain his rage. Overcome with grief, Sheila lunged across the courtroom table toward Michael in a moment of raw anguish, a father confronting the monster who'd stolen his child. In the end, no charges were pressed against Terry. Michael, however, was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to death.
Investigators tell us Jones got out of jail just hours before the shootings. He was accused of assault in Massenburg.
He came in there and he put the gun to my head, and I'm just begging and pleading to him, please, please, don't shoot me again, please.
Now, Central All Units reference Lee Road. Sheriff's Office on scene advises going to be a 6-year-old female victim with shallow breathing. Is requesting emergency traffic.
Paige described what she saw as pure evil.
I could just look at his eyes. It wasn't him.
On November 11th, 2023, 32-year-old Daquan Jones was arrested. He had attacked his girlfriend, 26-year-old Kira Massenburg, threatening to hurt her physically. Less than a year later in July 2024, authorities were again called to his home after he again attacked his girlfriend. As law enforcement agents hurled him away in handcuffs on that day, he kept making threats, promising to come back and finish what he started. On August 11th, 2024, less than a month after Daquan was arrested, he was released from jail, and within hours of his release, 4 lives would be changed forever. Daquan went on a violent rampage, ending the lives of 4 innocent people, one of whom was his 6-year-old daughter Zoe and her mother Kira Massenburg. The promise he made 9 months earlier fulfilled. What events led Daquan to go on such a violent rampage, and could anything have been done to prevent it and save that little girl's life? Let's find out in the case of Daquan Jones, the abusive dad who asked his 6-year-old daughter and girlfriend hours after being released from jail.
It happened. And it's like a Lifetime movie.
Unfortunately, this is no movie.
26-year-old Kira Massenburg has lived in North Carolina her entire life. She was born in Nash County and attended high school in Northern Nash High School. Once she was done with school, she moved to Rocky Mount in North Carolina. Her family, friends, and entire life was in North Carolina, and she never dreamed of leaving. For her, the small town life was more than enough. But unfortunately, her dream of a quiet small town life surrounded by friends and family would take a tragic turn when her paths crossed with Daquan Jones. It's unclear when the relationship between Daquan and Kira began, but what is clear is almost right from the start, the relationship was plagued with with troubles. It didn't immediately start with violence. Most DV relationships rarely do. But after Kira got pregnant with their daughter, things started to unravel. Daquan began exhibiting behaviors he didn't before. His temper got shorter and shorter, and before she knew it, Kira became a victim. It's not clear how frequently she reported the attacks to law enforcement, but on November 11th, 2023, Kira had enough and called the cops to their home. On that day, Daquan had hit her and threatened to do more. The threats came after they got into an argument, and instead of resolving their differences, Daquan kept threatening to hurt her physically.
I found out today Jones has a history of domestic violence with Massenberg, last year threatening her by saying, "Do you think I'm playing? I'm going to hurt you."
Though Kira kept the details of how Daquan was treating her to herself, she did leave some cryptic messages on her personal Facebook page. From those messages, we can see that Kira felt she deserved better and wanted desperately to leave him. At 26 years old, she felt like she was approaching her 30s and wanted better for herself and her daughter. She reposted this message to her Facebook page: "I want my 30s to be the healthiest and happiest chapters of my life." Unfortunately, Kira still stayed with him after that, and a few days later, he attacked her again. This time, hitting her so hard in the face, he knocked her teeth out and broke her nose. Kira again called 911, and they came to arrest Daquan. But as he was being dragged out, he kept making threats, and unfortunately for Kira, they were not empty threats. Right after Daquan was arrested and taken away, Kira was very shaken. Once she was discharged from the hospital, she was determined to not go back to Daquan. She expressed that with this post on Facebook: "Take everything personal. These folks be meaning what they say and how they treat you. Don't let society make you feel like you crazy," the post read. Daquan was in jail, which meant she was safe for the time being and gave her some time to get her life together and leave him. On the 21st of July, she wrote, "Stop trying to hold on to you should have been let go," to her Facebook page. This time around, she was determined to get herself out of that situation, and no matter how hard he got, she kept reminding herself that she was doing the right thing, and things were going to get better for her and her children. But unfortunately for Kira, before she could get as far away from Daquan as possible, the justice system failed her by releasing Daquan on bail. Daquan was released on bail on August 10th, 2024. A day before that, Kira reposted this message to her Facebook page: "Stop crying about how people treat you and get the out they face." That was the last message she ever posted to Facebook. A few days later, she was dead. At around 5 a.m. on August 11, 2024, only a few hours after Daquan Jones was released on bail, Sharpsburg PD got a call to 141 Weaver Circle. The caller stated that multiple people had been fired at. By the time law enforcement agents, forensics, as well as emergency services got to the location, they found a male victim laying on the ground on the outside of the property. Paramedics rushed in to work on him, but unfortunately, it was too late, and he was pronounced deceased. Not so far from where they found the man, they found a woman named Micaiah Page. She had also been fired at multiple times, but she was awake and was able to give the officers some information on what happened that morning.
Tonight, only on WREL, she survived. A 6-year-old girl and that girl's mother did not. She explains what led up to the shooting and how she was able to live to talk about it today.
Micaiah Page told officers that she, her daughter Bella, her friend Devontae Ricks, her other friend Kira Massenberg, and Kira's 6-year-old daughter Zoe Jones had been having a sleepover when Daquan Jones burst into the house. He immediately demanded that Kira and Zoe get their things and come with him. Kira was immediately alarmed, but she didn't want things to escalate, so she played along. Zoe, on the other hand, was having fun and did not want to leave her friend Bella, so she started screaming.
6-year-old Zoe didn't want to leave Micaiah Page's Sharpsburg home where friends had gathered late Saturday night.
Despite not wanting to go, Daquan didn't care, and he yelled at them to get in the car. Kira then picked up a screaming Zoe and headed for her car, which had been parked outside Micaiah's home.
She was screaming to the top of her lungs. I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
As they got into the driver's seat, Zoe was still screaming, and out of nowhere, Daquan pulled his firearm and fired 2
just out of nowhere. He shot Zoe, and then he proceeded to shoot Kiara.
What Daquan had planned for them that morning is still unclear, but what happened next sent chills down Micaiah's spine. Not only did he unalive his child and his child's mother, he turned the weapon towards Devontae Ricks, the only other man on the scene, and fired. Once Micaiah saw that, she turned to run while screaming at her daughter Bella to run to the neighbors.
I yelled to my daughter. I said, "Bella, run. Like, get out the house and run."
Bella made it to a neighbor's to safety. It was an argument between Daquan Jones and Kira Massenberg about Zoe leaving that prompted the shooting spree, according to Micaiah Page, who was next.
But as she was about to run, she saw Daquan coming towards her, his weapons drawn, and she didn't get far before she was hit by a bullet.
Then he came for me. And I just remember walking towards me and me trying to run, but I still got hit.
Even though she was hit, she still kept running, hoping to make it to the door before he reached her.
Paige was first shot here in her driveway along with another friend, Devontae Hicks. She says she started running for safety to this door here to get into her bedroom to hide.
But unfortunately, Daquan was faster than her and reached her before she could reach the door. As she looked up at him, hoping to beg him to spare her life, what she saw in his eyes sent chills to her bones.
Paige described what she saw as pure evil.
I could just look at his eyes. It wasn't him.
But she was determined to stay her life for her daughter's sake, so she proceeded to beg for her life.
He came in there and he put the gun to my head. And I'm just begging and pleading to him, please, please, don't shoot me again, please.
And somehow, Micaiah was able to get through to him. He turned around and headed to the car, leaving her still breathing.
Micaiah is now at home recovering with her daughter by her side, but her best friend and her best friend's daughter are gone.
Once he turned around, she rushed into her home before he could change his mind. And from her window, she watched him shove Kira and Zoe out of the driver's seat before getting in and driving off.
Paige says after Jones shot everyone, he got in Kiara's car to leave.
She had to move them out of the driver's seat so that he could get in the driver's seat to even drive the car. They didn't deserve it. Grateful, that God spared my life and allowed me and my daughter to still be here. It tore me to pieces, getting the news about Zoe and Kiara.
Unfortunately, when Daquan left Micaiah's home, his day of terror was not yet over. According to investigators, he dropped off little Zoe, who was still fighting for her life at a random person's house, before driving off with Kira's body still in the car.
Jones soon got in the car, dropped his wounded daughter off at this random house nearby, before ending up here with Kiara's dead body in the car.
At this point, Micaiah had called 911, and officers and paramedics were already there. She did her best to give them information on Daquan and Kira, especially the make and model of Kira's car, so they were already tracking him. They quickly put out a bolo on the car, and almost immediately after, another call came into dispatch about a child being dumped outside a house. The child was said to be badly injured, but still holding on.
Passenger all units reference Lee Road. Sheriff's Office on scene advised going to be a 6-year-old female victim with shallow breathing. Is requesting emergency traffic.
Deputies found a man and a woman shot here. The sheriff's office said the suspect, 32-year-old Daquan Jones, then drove off with a woman whom he had a relationship with and her 6-year-old child, later dropping off that child at a home in Nash County with a gunshot wound.
They described the car that dumped the child, and it was a match to Kira's car. Officers immediately headed to the location to speak with the people who had called 911. Once they had the bolo out on him, they were able to track home to a different house in a different county.
Well, this situation played out across 2 counties early this morning. Crime scenes in Wilson and also Nash County.
According to Sean Alston, the man living in the house Daquan drove to after committing those tragic murders, he was home sleeping when he heard loud banging on the door.
Sean Alston lives at the home that has now become the center of a crime scene. He said he was sleeping when he heard his friend Daquan Jones come in the house.
He went out to open the door and saw Daquan. He looked very lost and he was covered with red bodily fluids. When he confronted him about why he was covered in fluid that didn't appear to be his, Daquan refused to answer. Sean then asked about Kira, and that's when Daquan told him Kira was in the car asleep and he didn't want to carry her inside. Sean then walked to the car, and what he saw shook him to his core. Kira was not asleep in the car, but rather she was sprawled out in the back seat of the car, completely covered in red bodily fluids and not moving. However, before he could turn around to ask Daquan what was going on, he heard a loud bang coming from the inside of the house. By the time he rushed into the house, he found Daquan laying on the ground with a firearm in one hand. He was not moving. Sean was frozen to the spot, unable to move, and that's where law enforcement agents found him when they surrounded the house minutes later.
Describe what you heard then.
Nothing. Pow. Pow. And then police, get down. It happened. And it's like a Lifetime movie.
Unfortunately, this is no movie.
According to the local sheriff, they had tracked Kira's car to the house when they heard a firearm going off inside the home.
There is a bolo put out for the possible suspect.
and the suspect was located in Nash County near Gold Rock. And when officers pulled up, there was one fired.
When they heard the firearm go off, they quickly made their way into the house where they found Daquan dead on the ground and Sean shaking.
Law enforcement made entry into the house and found one subject that was deceased inside of the house.
Jones was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Before that, he shot his girlfriend. She was found dead inside of the car Jones was driving when he fled the scene at Weaver Circle.
While officers searched the house, Sean just stood there shaking, completely unaware of what was going on around him. He told local news he had known Daquan and Kira for years and could not process what had happened.
Quick moments, and he had no idea what was going on. But he tells me he has known both Jones and his now dead girlfriend for years, still processing the loss of life.
Seems so numb to the situation. I'm sure it's
For now.
Once the officers made sure there were no other threats in the house, they made their way to the car parked outside where they found Kira's body. But at that point, she was long gone.
The investigation ended right here on Jamie Road in Nash County, where investigators found a woman dead inside of a car and a man shot dead inside of this house.
By that time, Kira's family had heard of what was going on through Micaiah, and they had surrounded Sean's home. Unfortunately, they had to watch the cops pull Kira's lifeless body from her car.
Nash County Sheriff deputies surrounded this home on Jamie Road. Family members of the victim wiping tears and holding each other as the bodies were removed from the scene.
Investigators tell us Jones got out of jail just hours before the shootings. He was accused of assault in Massenburg.
Police say Daquan Jones shot and killed the girlfriend and their 6-year-old daughter. He also shot 2 other people before turning the gun on himself.
Though Kira's was gone, her family were still holding out hope that Zoe, who had been rushed to a nearby hospital, would make it. She was critically injured, but she was a fighter and was still holding on.
The Wilson County Sheriff's Office says that 6-year-old is currently undergoing surgery. It's unclear if she's going to live at this point. 2 of the other victims were taken to ECU Health, also undergoing surgery.
We start this evening with breaking news. This mother right here is dead, and her 6-year-old is in critical condition. 2 other people were injured, and the suspect is dead. All in what investigators are calling a murder-suicide.
Though their main suspect was not dead, investigators were still investigating the tragic incident. Their aim was to establish a timeline of events.
Law enforcement believes that this all got started through a domestic dispute. I want to show you the location where this all got started.
But unfortunately, less than 24 hours after her father brutally fired at her, Zoe Jones breathed her last.
Well, noon tonight, a community comes together to honor the lives of a mother and daughter killed in a murder-suicide.
Deputies say Daquan Jones shot and killed Kira Massenburg and their daughter Zoe before taking his own life.
Her mother, Kira Massenburg, who you also see, died yesterday. They were both victims of a quadruple shooting in a tragic case of domestic violence.
Further investigation into Daquan's criminal history shows that he had a history of violence towards women.
Investigators say the suspect had a history of violence toward women and had gotten out of jail only a day before the shooting.
According to his records, Daquan had threatened Kira with violence multiple times over the course of their relationship, but it wasn't just her. His record also shows that multiple women have reported him several times for violence.
Documents obtained by WREL show Daquan Jones had threatened Massenburg with violence in the past. This tragic case sheds light on how dangerous domestic violence can be.
This update sparked outrage in the community. Many people wondered how he was still allowed bail when he had multiple DV arrests on his records. But people weren't just outraged. They were also tired of the status quo and wanted things to change. A particular group that deals with victims of DV and their families spoke out about how important it is for there to be changes to their laws to protect not just the victims, but the little kids who are often caught in the crossfires.
WRO's Julian Grace talked with people who help victims of domestic violence and their families, and he joins us live from Raleigh.
You know, some are pushing for state lawmakers to do more to protect victims of domestic violence, especially children.
The group is spearheaded by Christy Melvin, who had also gone through exactly what Kira went through in Daquan's hands. Except in her case, she survived, but her little boy didn't.
Christy Melvin shared her story, and it starts with her baby boy, Jesse Ray Adams. Back in 2012, she left her abuser for good, but the two shared joint custody of Jesse. And later that year, her estranged husband did the unthinkable. He killed their 3-year-old and then himself.
Armed with what she knew about DV from her experience and the hundreds of victims they work with, Christy is fighting to get the lawmakers to change the laws.
You're not giving up this fight, are you?
No.
The hope is to have a bill passed by 2025.
Her past and experience with DV made Christy determined to ensure this doesn't keep repeating itself.
I've seen the worst possible scenario. And I don't want other people to feel the way I feel.
But just a couple of days ago, it happened again, this time in Rocky Mount. Nash County Sheriff says in a suicide, 32-year-old Daquan Jones shot and killed his child's mother, 27-year-old Kiera Massenberg, and his daughter, 6-year-old Zoe Jones, before killing himself.
The fact that in Kiera's case, Daquan had a lengthy history and was still granted bail is something Christy is trying to fight against.
Court documents show Jones was arrested for threatening Massenberg before. Investigators confirming to WRAL that the couple had been involved in numerous domestic disputes. Jones was even charged with felony assault against Massenberg.
From experience, Christy knows law enforcement agents don't typically do much to help victims like Kiera. The only thing they tell them is to leave, but in most cases, that's easier said than done.
Investigators stress if you must leave, you must leave.
It sounds like it's very easy just to pack up and leave, but there are a lot of barriers that exist in relationships that keep people from just packing up and walking away.
That's why Christy is determined to fight this fight, so there can be more options for women who find themselves in such dangerous situations. But Christy's fight is not just for the women. She's fighting for the little kids who can't speak for themselves and who are often the ones stuck in the middle.
Melvin is now keeping Jesse's memory alive. She's pushing Jesse's Law, which would ensure children are never in the presence or custody of an abuser.
Jesse's Law is to ensure that what has happened right now doesn't happen again and again and again.
This is one fight Christy Melvin is determined to win, no matter how long it takes or how hard it gets. She's determined to keep going for the sake of her son, every child who has ever lost their lives in cases like that, and the children who might find themselves in situations like that in the future.
Now, Melvin tells me she is going to push for Jesse's Law to pass in 2025. If it doesn't, she says she'll try again in 2026. 2027, the years go on. She just wants to showcase that she is not giving up this fight.
Tonight, a community comes together to honor the lives of a mother and daughter killed in a murder-suicide.
In the aftermath of their passing, Kiera's family and friends flooded Facebook with heartbreaking posts about her and her little girl. For many of them, it was like a dream they desperately wanted to wake up from, but can't. One of Christy's friends, Kamyron Lewis, left this message for her. Words can't even explain how I feel both of my girls are gone. I can write a book first off. I just want to say I love y'all with everything in me. No, I'm not okay. Moments where I can laugh about all the memories and moments where I just cry. Kiera Massenberg, our friendship was so genuine, there wasn't a day that went by where we didn't talk. A lot of great memories. I could come to you about everything you always tell me, Cam, you the prize, baby. I remember not too long ago I overslept for work, and she took me. I was only 15 minutes late, but we sat outside my job for an hour just talking. If you know me, you know these are my babies. And then boy, oh boy, my Zoe baby girl, you were so attached to me you would tell me you my friend. We stayed laughing. You always wanted me to carry you, LOL. I just wish I made you stay with me Saturday, man. Seeing you like that did some to me. But baby girl, hug your mommy for me. I love you guys. I can go on and on and on about our memories, but y'all broke me. I feel like a big piece of me is missing. I got Caden. I wish Zoe can just run up to me one more time. Fat me one more time. Rip Kiera girl and rip Zoe. I love y'all and I miss y'all already. Another friend left this message. Zoe, damn man, rip to my two favorite people. I'm broke down bad, damn Zoe, August 12th, 24 at 6:07 p.m. will be a day I'll never forget, princess. We've been up here all morning, all day with you. I've been fasting and praying the whole time, and to physically see you fighting till your last breath is heartbreaking, baby girl. We love you. You and your mom are in a better place. Rest in peace, my beautiful cousins. I love y'all and ever, Kiera Massenberg. From the outpouring of love online, it was clear that Kiera and her baby girl were loved by many people who will carry their memories with them. Kiera was also an active member of the local church, so they came together to say goodbye to Kiera and Zoe.
A mix of emotions, from hope to heartache.
Everybody, you are my strength.
Felt through every song, every prayer.
During a service tonight, members of the Wilson Church prayed for the family, and they offer support to anyone and everyone who's hurt.
The congregation came together to pray for Kiera and Zoe, as well as their family and friends, in their moment of pain and tragedy.
Some of us all think we need to be more aware, just to be more aware and to just listen.
Tuesday night, members of Word Tabernacle Church gathered not just for worship, but to remember two lives taken from the Wilson County community Sunday morning.
They also came together to start conversations around DV, its prevalence in their community, and what they can do to create change.
Through a moment of prayer, James Galliard, the senior pastor of the church, says they're praying for healing, reconciliation, and solutions to combat domestic violence.
It's just unfortunate that a young child lost their life. It's unfortunate that a young child and her mother lost their life. You know, I can't even imagine what this has done to their family.
They were determined to offer help to people in similar situations, so no other member of their church and community would be lost to DV.
It's hit very close to our church. One of the young ladies who was shot is actually a member of our church. And so the community, they will rally in a moment like this.
There's going to be some dark times ahead, but when you know you have people praying for you, you become healed and that days get better and brighter. It is a powerful thing.
So there you have it, 5 cases where baby killers got what was coming to them right there in the courtroom. Have thoughts on these chilling cases? Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're wanting more, check out the next recommended video on your screen.